Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer podcast. I am your host, Jeff Seltzer. Every week, I interview someone about their interests, life stories, whatever they've experienced, and whatever makes them happy. I'm trying to learn about as much as about people as possible, share their stories, and share a few of mine along the way. Last week was a fun one with Dana Runberg discussing celebrity autographs. If you listened last week, I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you so much for coming back. It means the world to me. And thank you for anyone who followed, downloaded, reviewed, or supported this podcast in any way. We got an amazing review on Apple Podcasts, which I really love to read. So I want to share that on the screen real quick for anybody who's out there who's watching this on video. So I do want to give a big shout out to, it looks like the person's name is Silver Lake 06. They said 5 stars, kept me entertained on my long commute. Jeff has a real winner on his hands here. In the first episode, I learned a lot about celebrity autographs and collectibles, a topic I knew nothing about. Made my commute fly by. Looking forward to episode 2. Silver Lake 06, I don't know who you are, but that's so sweet of you to say. So thank you so much. It really means the world to me. Anybody who's new to the pod, thank you so much for giving it a shot and checking it out. I think you'll have a lot of fun on this journey with me. Since last week, we've grown in terms of adding additional distributors. We were on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. As of right now, you can find this podcast on iHeartRadio, on Amazon, CastBox, and on Good Pods. Before I introduce my first guest for this week, or my only guest for this week, a few housekeeping notes. I want to make sure everyone's aware that we are on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. Make sure to follow, like, make comments, send me a DM if you have any questions or if you want to be a guest in a future episode. Once again, on YouTube, Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Insta is at Seltzer77. You can email us directly at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. And of course, for all things Jeff Seltzer, you can check me out at jeffseltzer.com. With that said, I'm super excited about our guest for this week. As some of you may know, and eventually the rest of you will find out, I'm a huge Disney nerd. Love Disney World. Been going for most of my adult life many times a year. Love it. Love reading about it. Love seeing it. Going to the parks, watching videos about it. And I think my guest this week has a similar passion about Disney World as well. So with that said, let me introduce Megan Fernandez to the show. Megan, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. Really, really appreciate it.
No, I'm so congratulations. This is great. I'm proud of you to go out on a limb like this and try something new. I'm envious a little bit. I'm always afraid to make leaps like that. So congratulations. This is great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just to be fair, it was one of those things where I was on a podcast about 2-3 months ago as a guest, and I knew nothing about podcasting. I did it. It was like a 45-minute or an hour podcast talking about my experience in professional wrestling. I had so much fun. I was like, man, this is great. Friends of mine were like, hey, you should start a podcast. I'm like, nah, I could never do that. I don't even know how to. But I was like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. So I spent about 2 months researching it, found out how to distribute it, how to set it up. In my work life, I do a lot of marketing stuff or whatever. So I kind of figured out the way to promote it, but I had no idea legitimately how to record it or how to put it up. So talked to a lot of people, got a lot of good information along the way. And here we are. So again, so thankful that you've joined me on episode 2, Megan. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Cool.
Happy to be here.
I appreciate that. So again, Megan Fernandez, thank you for joining. Can you give a little background on yourself, who you are, what makes you tick, things like that?
Sure. I'm your typical mom of 3. I'm 38. I'm a nurse. I am just devoted to family and love life. So of course that led me into my love of Disney, because when you go there, how do you not love life?
Absolutely. With that said, again, similar to me, you love Disney, you go there quite often and such. Can you take us through your early experiences, like your first time going to Disney World, or even just your first thoughts of, if you were older, like when you first heard about it, kind of like what kind of memories those bring to you?
Sure. So I'm one of 4 kids. My parents moved from the city out to the suburbs and just wanted to give us their perfect life. So one day my dad was either walking past a travel agent store when they had storefronts. And I believe this was in 1988. And he said he saw a brochure and there was a mouse on it. And he was like, what is this all about? And he took a look and he went home and he talked to my mom. And I guess back then flights were not like how they are now. And all of their kids were able to fly for free.
Wow.
So he's like, let's fly to Disney. He had never, I don't even think, he may have been on a plane. I don't think my mom had ever been on a plane. And yeah, they took us. I think my mom was still pregnant with my youngest sibling, and my dad fell in love. So we went almost every other year till I was 12 years old. So I thought Disney World was the only place to go on vacation. I didn't know other places existed to go on vacation. Um, and we just always went there. And I kind of took it for granted. I didn't realize like how lucky we were. But with that said, my dad worked all the time when we were growing up. He was like your typical cranky dad who would come in from work and like not want to play. And if we were loud, it was like, get out of here. And so that's what we always knew our dad as, is like cranky dad. And then for 2 weeks out of the year, we would go to this magical place where our dad was like the happiest dad on earth. And I was like, this magic is real. Like, dad's happy. This is crazy. So that's kind of where I fell in love with it and why it's so special. It was like I got to see my dad, all my family just like so happy, and we have the best memories there. So I carried that into my adult life.
That's fantastic. So it sounds like, you definitely have an emotional attachment to it, that it kind of brings you to a point where 50 weeks out of the year, your dad was a bit cranky, but those 2 weeks, you kind of saw like the perfect dad, where like you saw like a different person and I'm sure in his eyes, he was kind of like, I'm working 11 and a half months out of the year so I could bring my family this happiness and show them this joy. Which is fantastic to see. Like, I love to hear that.
Yeah.
What are your early memories of there? So going in, as you said, 1988, at that point, like I think it was just Magic Kingdom and Epcot were the only parks that were open.
Yeah.
And obviously both parks look very different than they do today. Can you kind of walk us through some of your experiences that you might remember from back then?
So when I was little, the only thing I really remembered was how hot it was. We went in August every year, and I remember thinking like, why is Disney World the hottest place ever? So that's a lot of my memories, like me being cranky because it was so hot. But I remember everything looking very cartoonish. I don't know if you remember Mickey's. There was like you can go in Mickey's house like back in the day.
Yes, that's over back where the Seven Dwarfs is right now. They or in Seven Dwarfs or in the back where the circus tent is.
Storybook.
They got rid of that and they built this up, right?
Yeah. So that always stuck out to me because I'm like, as a kid and even as an adult, we can pretend, but I'm like, oh my God, I'm in Mickey and Minnie's house. Like, this is crazy. So it was it was way more cartoony, but still for the time, like above anything I had ever seen. I remember getting up, like my dad would wake us up at 6 a.m., like pull the blankets off and be like, let's go. So I thought you only could do Disney by waking up at 6 a.m. and not sleeping until midnight that night and just go, go, go all day. So it was a lot of work. And I remember, again, one of 4 kids, and my mom stayed home with us and we cut corners wherever we could. So we would all like share one Mickey bar. And it would like start at the oldest kid. And by the time it got to me, I'm third in line. It would be like no more ears left, So I do remember always being like hot and go, 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 but like the best exhaustion ever.
Absolutely. Do you remember where you used to stay? Because obviously nowadays, we'll talk to it a little bit. There's a lot more options in terms of hotels, in terms of timeshares, all sorts of stuff. But back then, I remember, I think the first time that I went to Disney was like 1987. I think we stayed at like either a Holiday Inn or a Days Inn.
Yes.
I have very limited memories of it, but I do remember we probably spent like one day in both parks combined, did the hotel, and that was pretty much it. Versus now you've got all these Disney themed hotels. I'm sure some of them existed back then, but there were a lot more now.
Yeah. The first couple times we went, again, we were a larger family. It's hard to accommodate for a reasonable price, 4 kids and 2 adults. We stayed at the day suites. I remember that. And my mom had a coupon book where you could like get a night, pay for a night, get a night free. I remember the coupon book and them using that at check-in. And we stayed in a day suites and we would stay for 2 weeks. My dad always, my parents, like we made it quite a trip, and we do SeaWorld, sometimes Universal and Disney all in those 2 weeks. But we basically spent every single day in a park. My dad was not about rest days. Like we were, to the max, like definitely go, go, go.
That's awesome. Did your siblings at the time have similar experiences? Like looking back, and I'm sure you probably talk with them from time to time about it. Like, did they look back and say, wow, that was incredible, that was insane? Or, I mean, not everyone's wired for Disney, right? There were certain people who love Disney, and some people who are like, I don't want to go to an amusement park when it's 95 degrees out. That sounds miserable. Like that sounds like the worst trip. Like,
Yeah,
does your entire family share this passion, or
we
was it kind of
do.
you? Yeah,
No, we
that's
do.
great.
The stories we have, we drove down. We did fly once or twice, but we would typically drive. And anytime we bought a new vehicle, like a family vehicle, it would have to be a van because my dad would say, like, nope, we got to be able to drive to Disney in this. So we do. We have a lot of shared memories that are like super special. We talk about when Disney switched over to paper straws and we'd have to share a drink between us. And my brother, who's the youngest, the fourth, he would get like wilted paper straw with like barely any soda left in it. So we do. We have a lot of like really special memories, and then we carried that into our adult life. Between us, we have 14 kids,
Wow.
almost 15 kids. So we go together almost every other year. We plan like a huge family trip to Disney.
That's fantastic. So I guess then
Yeah.
fast forwarding ahead to being an adult now. Obviously, going to the parks as a kid with your parents versus going to the parks as an adult, either by yourself with your plus one or with your kids, very different experience, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on like Disney planning now, right? Obviously, back then you could use a travel agent, AAA was a thing. Things changed. Nowadays, with the internet, you could basically do everything yourself.
Yeah.
Again, we'll get into the timeshare in a second because that's, I think, a huge way about how
Yeah.
I travel there, and I assume how you travel as well. But in terms of just even like pre-timeshare, like just on the internet, you can book your own flight now. You can book all of your parks. You can book your tickets, whatever else like that. Kind of take me through that process.
So I find all of that very fun. I will plan a trip that I'm not even going to take. Like some days I'll just be like, oh, I wonder. I think that if you're into that and not overwhelmed by it, then it's so much fun. And I'm sure you remember back when you had to book your dining 180 days prior to your trip. Like for me, that was something to look forward to. So I would book this trip and then I'd be like, well, it's far off, but don't worry. In 6 months, we're going to be able to book dining. And then the next thing would be your fast pass, like 90 days. So then you'd have, okay, only 90 more days and we can book our fast passes. So I found all of it like very fun and almost like strategic, and planning out your days. Because if you're going to book your dining 6 months in advance, you have to know what park you're going to be in. So it is different now, obviously, but I still find it very fun. And it's like part of the whole process of this Disney trip. And it's like you almost have like a year to go from booking to thinking about where you're going to eat. And it's this whole long drawn out thing that by the time your trip comes, you feel like you like ran a marathon to get to it. But I feel bad for people who don't know all of this or maybe find it super overwhelming. It is a lot. And if you don't kind of are in the know with like what day you do this, or it could be super overwhelming. And I know a lot of people who choose not to do it because it's too much work.
No, absolutely. I mean, I almost look at a lot of that as like the golden era. Like Beth and I are planners. Like by default, we plan everything. We've planned the next 50 years of our lives, assuming we're going to live that long. Like we loved when it was like plan dining out 6 months out. Like the fast pass is when you could plan them out. So that way, when you got to the park, you knew 3 rides you automatically had each day. Like that was fantastic. Then obviously COVID came and Disney changed their policies, and then they added in Genie Plus, which then became a paid fast pass, which kind of was what it was. But unfortunately now, I'm not sure if you've seen, they're changing up the fast pass deal again too, where you can now, I think starting either this month or next month, you could pre-book your fast passes like a week out, which I think is fantastic because there's nothing more miserable than getting up at 7 a.m., having to try to book your first fast pass, then every 2 hours hoping for the best. Like this again, as a planner, I can go into the trip knowing, okay, great. Over the course of the week or whatever, I have these 3 rides every day. It's good. It's going to work out. Anything else beyond that, I can plan for. Just go back and forth,
Yeah. We have a trip coming up in less than 2 weeks.
Awesome.
And I think that switch over come maybe the end of July, like the 28th, maybe I think they're rolling it out. Okay. So I'm like reading all the blogs and watching all the videos of like tips and tricks. Not that anybody knows how to do it yet, but at least walking me through it because I feel like I finally kind of mastered Genie Plus and how to get around that. And because you're spending a lot of money to not know what you're going to get. And there are days where you go in at 7 a.m. and like everything, you don't get anything until 5 p.m. and it's like super disappointing.
Right.
And you still paid the same money. So
Yeah, or
I'm
to that point, if you're
excited.
stuck on a ride and all of a sudden your data's down and you can't book your next fast pass, you're like, oh shoot, what do I do now? How
Yeah.
do I make this work?
Or like you're having fun and you don't want to look at your phone, or it's not in the forefront of your mind. We would literally set alarms like on our phones for when our next Genie Plus selection could go off. And it kind of was I don't like being on my phone. I'm not a big, like when I'm in the moment,
Sure.
I don't like recording. I'm really bad with taking pictures. I'm trying to get better, but I hate being on my phone when I'm enjoying something. So, thank goodness my husband doesn't mind, because he would set the alarm
Right.
and it would go off, and then we'd have to pull over to the side and keep like refreshing and trying to get our next, lightning lane. And
Of course.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
it was a
definitely
lot.
evolved. I mean, I'm very curious because obviously looking at it from a business perspective, right? Like years ago, I mean, I've seen their videos on YouTube about like why a Genie Plus or Fast Pass, works or doesn't work or whatever, and the fact that it kind of like streamlines, but it doesn't. I mean, at least from a business perspective, they're obviously trying to make money on the Fast Passes now. So I get it. Like, I don't necessarily love it, but I understand,
Yeah.
it's a business, right? They're trying to make whatever they can. From a parks perspective, so obviously, as you know, there were 4 parks in Florida, the 4 different Disney World parks. What would be your favorite park? Like you have one day to go to Disney World. Which park do you go to?
So I feel like that's a loaded question. Like, am I going to eat? Am I going to ride rides? Like, I think right now I really love Hollywood Studios. I just love the vibe. I love walking, like, Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset Boulevard. You hear the like older music playing, like you just feel like you're in like glamorous Hollywood. And then you could just, go be in Toy Story's backyard or in Star Wars. So I love the vibe of Hollywood Studios right now. That's like my go-to.
That's awesome. Yeah, I do love Hollywood Studios as well myself. I mean, fantastic rides, great experience walking around. For me, there's nothing better than the Muppet Show. There, I will watch it every time, and
Same.
I will laugh at Statler Waldorf's dumb jokes every single time.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like I'll laugh before the joke hits because I know it's
Yep.
coming. And like my kids
Yes.
will look at me. At least one of my kids, I'm not going to say which one, will look at me
Uh,
and say, "Come on, Dad, this is dumb." And I'm like, "No, this is fantastic. Like this is
yeah.
amazing." So I absolutely
Yep.
love it. The only
Yep.
thing I would say that Hollywood Studios could definitely improve on is their quick serve food options, right?
Yeah.
Like Epcot, obviously, there's so many different places you can walk around. Animal Kingdom, I'll get into a second, is probably my least of the 4 parks. But like Magic Kingdom, there's so much quick serve. Even like
Yeah.
a Cosmic Rays, like I love to go in there to get some food,
Hmm.
watch him do his little shtick or whatever, and it's whatever else like that.
Yeah.
Um, if you go to Magic Kingdom, like where's the first place you go?
So I'm so different now because we go so often
Sure.
that I love to just get a coffee and go on the train because it's open now.
Yeah,
And I drink my coffee and like just ride around, and you have the nice breeze. Again, we go in August mostly.
is
So
yeah.
it's nice to have the air blowing on your face. But that's like my go-to. I walk down Main Street, I go to the Starbucks and then hop on the train. Um, I don't love Magic Kingdom anymore. It used
Okay.
to be the first park we would hit anytime we would get to Disney. Like day one, we'd go to Magic Kingdom. Now I feel like we go early in the morning to have our coffee, ride the train. We leave and then go back at night to again just like sit right in that Main Street hub area, have a drink like a soda or a slushy, and literally just sit and watch.
Do you think that's because the park has evolved or is not evolved, or do you think that's largely because as your kids get older, right, you probably have more different interests, right? Like when
Yep.
they're little, like there's a number of safe rides that your kids can go on and walk around and do. Versus as they get older, they're probably more interested in the Tower of Terror
Hmm.
or Rise of Resistance or different things that they like. Oh, I'm too adventurous now. I don't need to do Peter Pan again.
Yeah, that's exactly it. My oldest is 19. So when he comes with us, he normally sleeps till like noon, hangs out at the pool, and will come alive like at 5 p.m. and go out. And he wants to hit up, Epcot and do Guardians or, so yeah. And then, our daughters are obviously the same age and they're in that, going into high school, and it's all about getting the good pictures
Of course,
for Instagram
of
or
course,
whatever.
yes.
And then, yeah, my youngest is 12. So he's kind of even coming out of that, wanting to do all the things in Magic Kingdom. So yeah, it's definitely just that it's evolved, because we used to go there, definitely start off our trip and hop there probably 3 out of the 5 days, to hit up all those classic Disney, but just geared more towards those little kids or first timers.
Yeah. I'm super excited because I haven't gone to Epcot since they took down all the walls around the Epcot ball. Because
Yeah.
for years, like right before COVID, and then even the last couple of years, they were doing all the different creation for the Moana experience,
Hmm.
things like that. That like what used to take like 5 minutes to get across Epcot would take like a half hour because you had to walk around all
Yeah.
the fences, whatever.
In
So
like a little, yeah.
yeah, and it's tight. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people. So I'm heading out in September. So I'm super excited to check out what it looks like now. Check out the Moana thing. Even check out the new version of Splash Mountain for Magic Kingdom. So
Yeah. Yeah.
always looking for new things.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
similar to you, it sounds like since we do go down to Disney World quite often as well, like we definitely experience it different than we did years ago. Where like the
Hmm.
average person who goes or average family that goes like every let's say 2 to 4 or 5 years, they probably feel like they have to hit everything because if they don't, it's going to be years before they go back again. I mean, years ago when Beth and I first started going, that's how it was. But we're at the
Hmm.
point now where we're like, okay, we pick our favorites. We'll take an afternoon break, go to the pool, hang out. And for certain things we don't do, that's fine. But we try to experience something new every time, whether it be like a new restaurant, a new ride, or whatever. We try to kind of like add something else to the proverbial tool belt of
Yeah.
things and experiences that we hadn't done before.
That's great. We are creatures of habit. I was booking our dining and I had all these restaurants that we were going to try. And we're literally going to the same five that we go to every time we go. But that's great. That's,
Which is great as well. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to go, you want to have a great experience. And like for me, I mean, probably no one's more routine driven than I am in real life. Like I
mhm.
eat the same 3 or 4 foods every week or every month, same restaurants. I mean, we go to the Olive Garden, we go to Chili's, we go to Cheesecake Factory. Like there are 3 or 4
Yeah.
things we always do because we know it's going to be good. Right.
Yes.
So if you're going, however often you're going, you want to experience it and you want to make sure that you come back with the positive experience. So I mean,
Yeah.
totally get that.
Yeah. So about the food, people are
Yes.
huge foodies in
Okay.
Disney. My
Yes.
husband is, my kids really are. But I'm like you. I eat the same three things every day. Like same breakfast, same lunch, same dinner. I like what I like. I'm kind of simple in that way. Do you find I find sometimes it's hard in Disney World to like stick to my just like simple, boring eating. It almost that's one of my stressors in Disney is like what to eat that I'm not gonna not enjoy or like and it's more just because I'm simple and I like what I like and don't deviate because I'm like, well, I don't want a bellyache or I don't want to be, nauseous or whatever. Are you like a Disney foodie person? Because that's like a whole other subculture of Disney people.
So it's a great question. I mean, I'd say in honesty, I mean, foodie is probably not the word to describe me. On a side note, my family and I just went to Tokyo Disney a few weeks ago, which was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
But everybody basically said to me going in, like, Jeff, you've got to try all the food in Japan. And I'm like, okay. So came back from Japan. The 2 best meals that I had, we went to Shake Shack twice, which was amazing. Right. And everyone's like, you went all the way to Japan to go to Shake Shack? I'm like, yes. And it was amazing. I mean, we
Yeah.
didn't go all the way there for Shake Shack. I mean, we did 7 days in Tokyo Disney, did some other stuff and whatever else like that. Like for me, like you said, I'm not a foodie. So I didn't go there with the idea of I'm going to try all these new things. Like I know what I know, what I like, what I like. Like I wanted to experience
Yeah.
Disney. We experienced Disney. When we go to Disney World in Florida, I would say like in Magic Kingdom, it's always Cosmic Rays. I get a cheeseburger or chicken fingers or something.
Hmm.
At Epcot's where I got a little more adventurous, specifically because I usually go in September during like the Food and Wine Festival.
Hmm.
So where they have a lot of the carts. So for those that aren't aware, Disney has done a great job of kind of creating seasons where seasons didn't exist. Like years ago, there were definitely like dark or down or slow periods in Disney World that you could go and there'd be no lines. Like before we had kids, Beth and I would go like late February because at that point it was dead. Like there were different time periods. I used to go by myself in mid-September and it was dead.
Hmm.
Since then, Disney's done a great job of adding race weekends where they're all of a sudden adding like 20,000 incremental runners who wouldn't have been there otherwise. So they're getting a
Yeah.
lot more revenue, a lot more stuff like that. And then both in the fall and the spring, they have different, let's say, food festivals they add. So they have the Flower and Garden Festival in the spring and the Food and Wine Festival in the fall, where basically into international area of Epcot, they have carts. So like outside of each country, they have like in Mexico, like you can go inside the Mexico area and have sit down food, but they have carts where you can get some special tacos or drinks, whatever else like that. So I will try to go to some of those carts and try something a little bit different. Friends of mine say you should do it around the world and get loaded and drink around Epcot. Like for me, I'm a lightweight. Like if I have one drink, I'm
Same.
probably about done, and I won't
Yep.
make it. I won't make it past like China, so it's not a good
Same.
idea for me.
Yeah.
So I'll try a couple of foods, but again, also I have big eyes and a small stomach, so for the most part, I'll try a few things. I'll get full and then either go back to the room or figure it out from there. So,
Yeah.
long story short, like I'll try a few things, but I usually go back to like, even though I'm trying a few things, I go back to what I like every single time. So
Yeah.
it is what it is. I'm a creature of habit, you know?
Same. And even looking at yours and Beth's pictures on social media of Tokyo, I was interested in the food. I'm like, what are they going to eat? That would stress me out. It's a big reason I don't like to travel or travel internationally. I've never really, and it's so silly, I'm sure, but I'm like, I don't know what I would want to eat there. I'm always afraid I'll be allergic to something. Like
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. It's a little weird, but I was interested in your food in your last adventure.
Yeah, we'll eventually have a podcast on our trip to Tokyo, but I'll say, I mean, I'll probably do another podcast on this as well. I definitely have food anxiety. Like for the most part, like I will get anxiety about like, will I find something I like? If I try this, will I get a stomach ache? Like, will this kind of send me to the bathroom, back to the room for whatever? So like for me, like that's probably also part of the reason why I try to be simple.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure that the overall experience for me is good, but also those
Yes.
around me. Like if I'm with other people at the park, I don't want to say, hey guys, I'm gonna disappear for a while or whatever else like that. Like I want to
Yeah.
make sure everyone's not nervous for me, I guess you can say.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. That
No,
makes
it's
me
a real
feel
thing.
better.
It's legit, and I've talked to other people that are the same way too. Like
Yeah.
growing up, I was always like why do I feel this way? But then I'm like,
Yep.
oh right, because part of it is I'm a people pleaser, and that's part of the reason why I'm like I don't want to ruin other people's experiences.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know, I overthink everything as well. So that's something else that's just legit about me, I guess. I don't know.
That's why we like planning our Disney vacations, for 2 years and
Oh,
knowing where
100%.
we'll
Like,
be.
yeah, I mean, that's probably part of the reason. And again, this probably gets too much into my own psyche, but the reason why I'm such a planner is because I want to try to make sure that every detail is going to be as perfect as possible, recognizing
Sure.
things will change and things will move. But I figure going in without a plan, you have a lot more likelihood of failure than going with some kind of plans, at least
Yeah.
directionally adjust for. So I don't know. Again, another future podcast, I'm sure. Maybe I'll bring in my therapist and we could talk
Yeah.
about it. We'll see. Anyway, with that said, I did also want to get into kind of the way that I vacation and I think the way that you vacation as well. So we've talked before this about Disney Vacation Club, which is, for those of you that aren't aware, the timeshare program that Disney World runs. Real quick, long story short on this, I know timeshares definitely get a bum rap in terms of their waste of money. People lose money. This is bad or whatever. So going into Disney Vacation Club, I had a similar mindset. I was like, is this worth it? Is it a scam? Whatever it is. I'll say this. If you are a Disney fanatic like myself, and it sounds like Megan is as well, it's worth it. So if you use your timeshare, definitely worth it. Additionally, there are ways to rent out your years that if you're not going to go, you can rent it out and kind of get your money back for the year. Beth and I have had Disney Vacation Club, let's say membership or whatever you want to call it, for it's almost 10 years at this point. It's definitely changed the way that we vacation. Previously, we'd go to, a hotel at Disney. Kids were younger, so basically the four of us in one room. By using Disney Vacation Club, we have additional options where we can get like a 2-bedroom suite or additional kind of larger rooms. So this way, especially my daughters are 16 and 14, it definitely changes the overall experience. Where like if Beth and I want to go to sleep earlier because we're old folks and we just want to get our sleep in versus the kids want to stay up and party or whatever, they can do that in their room. We can go to sleep and it's all good. So for us, it's worked. Additionally, Disney Vacation Club, you can buy it directly from Disney or you could buy it via resale, which buying it via resale, there are some restrictions and you lose some of the perks, but at the same time, we found it was significantly cheaper to get it that way, which was fantastic. Lastly, and then I'll ask Megan about her experiences with the Disney Vacation Club. The points that you get with Disney Vacation Club, you can use in other Disney resorts as well. So a couple of years ago, Allison, my younger daughter, and I went out to California and we were able to use the points at the Grand Californian over at Disneyland, which is fantastic. Saved us a significant amount of money. We got a great place to stay. The Grand Californian, if you haven't stayed there before, has a gate that goes straight into the park. It was fantastic. Hilton Head's other places, Hawaii, lots of different things. If you bought it direct from Disney, you can use it for cruises. There's lots of different options and ways. So that's kind of my experience. Megan, can you kind of walk us through how you got into Disney Vacation Club, your planning, and kind of like why you chose it?
Sure. So my husband and I went in 2009 together for the first time for like a long stay. We had done a day in 2008. My parents gifted it to all of us, my siblings, our kids. So it was like a big trip. And I have to be honest, my husband was kind of like, oh, I don't want to go to Disney World, you know? And I'm like, what? We didn't talk about this before we got married. Do you not like Disney? So we went, and it was Christmas time. It was 2009. So like before things changed and were the complication, that it is now. So we had so much fun. As soon as we came home, we were already talking about going back. We ended up going back in another big, huge family group in 2011, got home from that trip. Same thing. We're already looking to go again. So, we went one more time after that, and then ended up staying at Beach Club. We decided, let's splurge, let's stay at Beach Club. It was definitely like a reach in our price range, but we're like, let's just give it a go. And it was February. So you're leaving freezing New Jersey and you go down to Florida, and it's nice, it's warm. And then you're at the Beach Club, which is one of my favorite locations. We were in a studio, but the kids were little at that time, so it wasn't bad. But just like being in that deluxe resort, being able to walk out right into the back entrance of Epcot, we were like, how do we go back to vacationing the way that we used to, where you had to take a bus to any park, So when we got home from that trip in 2015, we were like, let's look into this Disney Vacation Club. We're going all the time. We really love those very expensive accommodations. And that's when we bought our first contract, and we bought it at Polynesian. We bought direct through Disney, and we were hooked. And since then we've bought resale, we've sold and bought other contracts. So it was kind of, we went like full send on that first contract. And then we learned about the resale market, and definitely found ways to, use our money a little bit wiser, get more points for less money, and still get those great benefits of, we're annual pass holders. So we kind of found the loophole. Like if you have an annual pass, then you still get these great benefits. So, but yeah, it was definitely just that first time at a deluxe resort where we were like, well, this was a lot of money. We can't do this every time, but how can we figure out how to do this every time?
Absolutely. So real quick disclosure, we are not sponsored by Disney, Disney World, Disney Vacation Club, or anything. We're just two Disney fanatics that are loving to talk about it. With that said, just to add to what Megan said, so for Beth and I, it was a very similar experience. So first time that Beth and I went to Disney World together was 2003. It was either 03 or 06 that we were walking by like one of those stands that was like, hey, have you heard about Disney Vacation Club? And we're like, I don't know. Actually, it was 03 then, because we weren't even engaged yet at the time. And we're like, should we? And we're like, well, we're not really engaged or even married, so should we really be investing into anything at this point together? It was kind of early, but we both at least had a similar mindset. We're like, this could make sense. Should we do it or whatever? Went to Disney World a bunch of times since then. In 2014, I think it was, Beth and the girls went on a Disney cruise. And I skipped the cruise because I have severe motion sickness. And I was like, absolutely, I'm not doing a cruise. So they did the cruise, and I stayed at Disney World a few days by myself before they came over and met me at the park. So while I was there, I was like, well, I got some time to myself. Let's take a tour of one of those DVC deals. Because they called me up. They're like, hey, we'll give you a $100 Disney gift card if you take a tour and whatever else. I thought, I'm like, that sounds fantastic. I'm doing nothing else. $100 will buy me, a couple of meals or a couple of t-shirts, whatever else like that. I saw it and I was like, this sounds fantastic. This is great. When the girls were done with the cruise, I talked to Beth about it, and we started looking into it. We're like, okay, here's the price or cost it would be to buy direct. And then Beth had seen something online about resale. And I was like, resale? That sounds really weird. Like, is that legit? Like, what does that even look like? Like, I thought it was really shady. But I eventually, it turned out it was not shady at all. It was legitimate. I mean, it's a contract. There's like legal stuff behind it. Like, it is legitimate. So we ended up buying our first set of points for the Beach Club via resale, which at the time, it was before refurbishments. It was before things had changed. And just looking 10 years later or whatever, like the price or the value of it skyrocketed by like 70% since I bought it, which is fantastic to look back in time and say, so if I sold those points right now, my contract, I would still be ahead of the game. Plus I would have gotten 10 years worth of vacations out of it, which is fantastic. So we got a certain number of points. Then like 2 years later, we're like, you know what, we could use a few more points. So we bought some more points for Beach Club. And so we were at like a decent allotment, but we're like, you know what, maybe we could use some more. Maybe try a different hotel. So then, like 2 years later, we bought a bunch more points for Bay Lake, which is over at Contemporary, because we're like, we can use the Beach Club points for Bay Lake, but for those of you that don't know, with the Disney Vacation Club, you can use your points and you can book 11 months out for your home resort. You can book for any other resort 7 months out. So the problem was we wanted to try Contemporary in Bay Lake, but by the time we were at 7 months out, there really wasn't much available. So we're like, oh, we buy some points for Bay Lake, maybe that'll give us an opportunity. So we did
Yep.
that. So now we've got a whole bunch of points for Bay Lake and Beach Club, and it's fantastic. Like for us, it's changed the way we vacations. We do all sorts of different things. Like, and looking at it, like we'll take family trips, the four of us. We'll take trips, just Beth and I. Once a year, I'll take a mecation, as I call it, where basically I go by myself to usually to Disney World. I usually head up Halloween Horror Nights over at Universal, and it's just a lot of fun. It's just kind of the way that it is, because I like family time, I like couple time, and I like me time. Like for me, that's just kind of the way that I'm wired. So it's definitely changed the way things are going in terms of vacationing. But again, when you make that kind of a commitment, you have to look at it and say, okay, this is like a 40 or 50 or 60-year contract. I have to be serious the fact that like I want to keep going back. Right.
Yeah.
You can't look at it and say, I'm going to go this year and maybe again in 10 years. If so, it's not a good investment. But being that we go as often as we do, and similar to you, I have an annual pass as well. So I look at it and I'm like, okay, so the only real cost that I have is, incidentals, food,
Yep.
and flights.
Yeah.
And from a flight perspective, I have United Chase cards. So I try to accrue miles throughout the year. So that covers most of our flights as well. And it just works out well for us. I mean, so much so that, again, not necessarily Disney World, but for Tokyo Disney, for the four of us to fly to Japan, 3 of the flights were on miles because we just saved them up for the credit card. So again, we try to be as smart about it as possible. And, some people have points cards or dollar cards, whatever, but like 95% of our spending is on the United card. So it basically gets us the rest of the way there.
Yeah. We're very similar. We have one card that we'll use, and we use it for the points. And I've actually followed in my parents' footsteps, and I make my kids road trip to Disney. We like the road trip aspect of it and kind of just being in charge of our travel. Like the other day when I saw that the Microsoft issue and the flights were grounded, I'm like, well, that's why I drive to Disney World, because I'm not missing my check-in day. But same, we'll use those points for a hotel stopover. We usually drive to Georgia, and then we'll have a nice slow drive in the next morning. But yeah. Oh, my things are beeping. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries at all. I'll talk for a few minutes while you take your headphones in, if you don't mind. So similar to Megan, so Megan just mentioned that she oftentimes drives to Disney World. So last year we had an unfortunate incident where we were supposed to actually go to Aulani, Hawaii, using our timeshare, our Disney Vacation Club points. Problem was late June of last year, United had all sorts of airline issues where they had planes in the wrong parts of the world. So we showed up at the airport. It was like the week before July 4th for our trip that we planned to go to Hawaii. Sat there, supposed to be on time as soon as we got to the airport. All of a sudden, it was delayed 8 hours. 5 p.m., they canceled it. They said, yep, there's no plane. It was a Tuesday. Like, we can get you there on Saturday. And we're like, well, that's not going to work because our reservation in Hawaii is good through the following Tuesday. And we're not going to, fly to Hawaii on Saturday to come back on Tuesday. It just didn't seem like it was going to be worth it. So what we ended up doing was we canceled that trip, and then we drove to Florida, which as a family, we'd never done before.
I remember you doing that.
Yeah, it was definitely an adventure. It was definitely something that we'd never done before. To be honest, I don't know if the four of us would ever do that again. The four of us in one car was definitely a lot. We looked into, could we fly out of DC, out of Baltimore, other places, but United was just such a bad place at that time.
Yeah.
That it was going to be like days before we could fly down there, so it just wasn't going to work. So we drove to Florida. We ended up staying at the Grand Floridian because I guess there were open reservations, I guess, because basically everyone in the Northeast was having the same trouble that we were. We were trying to go to Hawaii. They were trying to go to Florida. So everybody canceled their hotel reservations. So there was a lot of availability down there. So we made the most of it. We had fun. We did enjoy it. Definitely one of those, let's say, bucket list items of like, hey, let's drive to Florida and experience it. Show the kids the country, things they've never seen before, stuff like that. But with that said, I don't think that we will probably be doing that again anytime in the near future. So
the ride down is great. You're excited. It's fun. The ride home, every year we're like, we're not doing this. Next year we're flying. We're definitely going to fly. And then we end up driving. But yeah, that ride home really is sad. You have that like post Disney like sadness. And then you have like 16 hours in your car to be sad. So.
Yeah, to your point, and Beth always calls this the the vacation hangover, the Disney hangover, right?
Yeah.
It's a case of like we have an amazing time on vacation on the trip, but then either on the way home or as soon as you get home, you're like, oh, like it's over. Like this is it for now. So like what we end up usually
beauty.
Yeah, we
DVC, you're going back.
oh, absolutely. That's usually where we end up. We plan our next trip like immediately when we get home. We're
Yeah.
like, okay, that's kind of the way to remove the sadness is kind of like put a light at the end of the tunnel and say, okay,
Mhm.
here's what we're doing next, right? And
Yeah.
so like we got back from Japan a few weeks ago. Within a week, we had our spring break trip planned for next year. So we're working through some stuff. We're planning some stuff. I've heard that the band trip for Morris Knolls and even for Morris Hills high schools are going to be to Disney
Yes.
World as well next year as well. So we're working on something for that. So we'll see what happens.
Yes, I heard that. I work in the schools as a nurse, and they somebody who's connected to the band had said, "Do you want to come as the nurse for the trip?" And I'm like, "Well, do I have to leave my kids home because I can't go with other people's kids if I can't bring my kids?" But yeah, I heard the band trip is to Disney. That's awesome.
Yeah, so really excited about that. I know there are a couple other families in the area who we've already talked to. We're like, yeah, we're going to go down and maybe see our kid for the parade or the show and kind of do our own thing.
Yeah,
We're like, that's absolutely what we're going to do. We're going to basically, we've
yeah,
already booked our hotel down there. Hoping
that's
everything
great.
goes as we want it to. We'll go down there, probably leave after them, come back before them, see their
Yeah,
performances. They do their thing with their friends. We do our things together, and then everyone's happy. So it's a
that's
win-win, right?
great. That is
Yeah.
a win-win. That's awesome.
Absolutely. What's your do you have any Disney hacks? So in terms of going to the parks, like is there one thing that when people say, "Hey Megan, you're a huge Disney, whatever," what would you suggest I do? Or what's the one thing that's kind of like under the radar that people aren't aware of?
Oh gosh, I'm all about either going early and, getting, let's say you're not paying for Genie Plus or getting to a park early, like doing that rope drop, like they call it, and getting to that big ticket ride and, or staying late a lot of times after the parks close. People don't know this, but as long as you get online before that 10 p.m. closing time, you can stay online for that ride. So yeah, there's so many. I guess it would have to be more specific to like food or this or that, but I'm all about like get in early, hit those big ticket rides that you want to get. Hollywood Studios, I had a friend, she did rope drop. She had Slinky Dog, Rise of the Resistance, and Tower of Terror within like an hour. Oh, Mickey and Minnie's Railway. Like she hit those big ticket items within like 2 hours and didn't do Genie Plus. It was just running from one to the next and kind of beating that big rush of people who maybe sleep in or eat breakfast. And so, yeah, I would take advantage of those early times or those later in the evening. If you're staying on property or in a deluxe hotel, sometimes they give you those extra magic hours. I went in April and my husband and I went to Epcot at 9. It was open from 9 to 11. And I was like, let's test it out, see what you can do. And we were able to do everything from 9 to 11 that you would have waited in a 60, 50, 70-minute line during the day with the
That's
rest of the
awesome. Yeah, I was
crowds.
going to say, I mean, you pretty much covered off most of what I was going to say. Like my biggest Disney hack I tell people is if there's a ride that always has a long line, get into the line like 15 minutes before park close.
Yeah.
Because as long as you're in line before the park closes, they will get you on the ride as long as the ride doesn't go down.
Yeah.
Versus like Rise of Resistance, you can wait 2-3 hours. That's a Star Wars ride in Hollywood Studios. Or you could pay $30 for the one single ride fast pass for that ride. So getting into line like right before park close is definitely the ultimate hack. I say the other one that I often tell people too is if you want the Disney Resort experience without paying Disney Resort prices, stay at the Swan or Dolphin Hotel.
Yeah, my brother stays there often.
What people don't realize is that they are right basically at Epcot, right by the Yacht and Beach Club and Boardwalk, but they're owned by Marriott. So it's cheaper rates. If you're a Marriott member or have Marriott status, you can use points. There are different ways to do it. But you have a lot of basically the good neighbor like discounts or deals or whatever else like that. So you get in early and such. So it's as if you're staying at a Disney resort, but not paying Disney resort prices. So that's the other hack that I would oftentimes mention.
Yeah. And they have like suites. He was upgraded.
Nice.
We went together 2 summers ago. They upgraded him. He had a huge room, great view. He looked right out over, I think it's Crescent Lake right there. He could see the boardwalk, he could see the beach club and watch the fireworks in Epcot. So it's great value. It's funny. 2 of my brothers are not DVC and I'm DVC with another brother. So when we all go together, our trips are vastly different. The two brothers who are not DVC, they're making us wake up, do the rope drop. We stay till 11 at night, and then me and the other brother, we're kind of like, I'm coming back in 3 months. Like, are you dying to get up at 7 a.m. and do all of this? But yeah, so the brothers who are not DVC, if we're staying Boardwalk Beach Club, they're right there. We walk home together. We get up and they're right there on the boardwalk. That's a great hack. My brother definitely takes advantage of that.
Yeah, and for those that aren't aware as well, so in the Epcot Hollywood Studios area, there's a boat that goes from different hotels to different parks, whatever else like that. And there's a boat stop right in front of the Swan and Dolphin hotels. So from a Disney transportation perspective, anybody who wants to get to Hollywood or to Epcot, that's right there. You can also fairly easily walk. Like Epcot's probably about a 10-minute or less walk. Hollywood Studios, probably a little bit more than that, but it's not too bad. Shuttles are right there from a bus to get to the other parks as well. So definitely options. But again, you don't feel like you're off site. Like you definitely feel like you're on site without truly being on site, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Two last quick stories I wanted to kind of get to before we, I guess, close it for the week. So sometimes DVC does offer specials and special things. A few years ago, I participated in this, as my family did, and I think you did as well, where Disney Vacation Club offered a special Frozen on Broadway performance, where, for those that don't remember, Frozen, the animated movie, not to be confused with the horror movie about a ski lift that gets stuck, was a Broadway show. Elsa, Anna, Olaf, all them. And they had a special, I don't remember what day of the week it was. There was a special performance on Broadway, but you had to be a Disney Vacation Club member. For me, it was an amazing experience because we wanted to see it. The price wasn't that bad. They had a post-show kind of Q&A. They kind of made it a little more special for DVC members. I'm pretty sure you went to it. Can you share any memories you have from it if you did go to it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It was before COVID shutdowns, and we went in October of 2019. So we had no idea like what was to come in just a few short months. My kids were maybe like fourth and second grade at the time, maybe even a little younger. And it was the first time taking them into the city to see a Broadway show. And I brought my mom because my husband and my dad don't really care for musicals as much. So yeah, it was so nice. Like we took the bus in and it was this whole thing, and we went out to eat before, and the audience was great because, we're kind of all like-minded, like excited to be there. It was this perk. You felt a little bit special. And it was such a great show. I remember the projections like on the sides, and it reminded me of like watching, the fireworks on Main Street. And it was so nice. We had a really, really great time. And then my kids were like, we have to go back. What should we see next? And we were ready to plan our next one. And then like Broadway shut down, and it was kind of that like big fun event before, our lives kind of got turned upside down a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds great that it was pretty much a gateway into Broadway for your kids, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Also because Frozen didn't unfortunately survive COVID. As of now in July of 2024, Frozen is long gone from Broadway. I'm hopeful that one day they'll put up one of those performances onto like Disney Plus or something, because I assume they probably recorded some of that stuff. They put up Hamilton a while back.
Yeah.
So I hope they do, because it was such a fun live show.
Yeah.
Like, as much as everybody loved the movies, it was just such a great in-person experience, I would say.
Yeah, it was great. We had a great time.
Yeah, so that was awesome. Last story that I crack up when I think about this. It was probably about a year or two ago when Beth and Allison, so Beth, my wife, Allison, my younger daughter, went to Disney World, just the two of them. And I think Beth stayed back in the hotel one night by herself, and Allison was walking the parks by herself. And you were walking the parks and happened to just run into Allison. It was crazy, right?
Yeah, I was in Liberty Square, and I was with my daughter who knows Allison. But of course, she's like looking around, not paying attention. And I'm looking straight ahead, and I'm like, I know that girl. And I thought it was your other daughter, Robin, because Allison, she was so confident walking around, like doing her thing. And I kind of did one of these and waved at her, and she looked at me and she waved at us. And I don't even know if Adriana was even realizing that I just saw her friend walking around Disney. But yeah, I think I messaged your wife after. I'm like, I swear I just waved at one of your daughters in Magic Kingdom. But it's funny, we've gone so many times now. I run into someone I know almost every single trip.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially, rest of the country, not so much, but in New Jersey, like election week, schools are closed Thursday and Friday. So it's oftentimes referred to as Jersey week, where basically half of the state of New Jersey goes down there. Spring break also, similar to you, like there's a number of people that we've run into multiple times. You never know who you're going to see. So it's
Yeah.
always a fun or funny experience. I would say too, since we do go down to Disney World so often, like it's one of those places where I feel super comfortable saying to my kids, okay, you guys go do whatever you want, meet us back at the hotel, whatever. I mean, they're older now, so it's obviously a decent comfort level, but it's nice because it changes the way we vacation. We have time for, as a family, we have time, just the kids and just the parents.
Yep.
So it definitely has evolved as a vacation and as a family at this point, which is nice.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I'm proud of my kids when they like know the transportation, how to get back. Like, oh, well, we could take a boat or we could take that. And I'm like, oh, I'm a proud mom right there.
Absolutely.
You know your transportation.
Absolutely. I mean, we tested them a few years ago and they passed with flying colors. And, I mean, definitely what helps is the fact that with smartphones and Find Friends, at any point we could see where they are, right? So if we're in the hotel, we're like, oh, no, they're on the bus, they're here, whatever else like that. Like we feel good about it versus, again, 30, 40 years ago, probably a different experience for parents in terms of leaving kids, in a different state all by themselves. So, technology definitely helps when it does.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Megan, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation. Anything you'd like to promote or plug or talk about before we close out?
No, I'm just literally your typical like Disney fan that loves to talk Disney and nothing really to sell here. Just if you ever want to do this again, I had so much fun and I feel like there's so many things that we didn't even touch on that are, running through my brain. So this was really fun. Thank you so much.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Megan. We'll definitely have a part 2 at some point. So with that said, guys, thanks again for joining us. First of all, thanks for Megan Fernandez for joining on this awesome conversation this week. Again, all the feedback that we got from episode 1 does mean a lot to me. Definitely keep it coming. Positive, negative, whatever it is. Comment, like, review, auto download, all that fun stuff. Do what you can. Just as a reminder, we're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Castbox, Good Pods, whatever that is, but that's where we are. On Instagram, you can follow us on Everybody Has a Story Pod. DMs are open, so definitely reach out with questions. If you want to be a future guest, anything you want to share, go to jeffseltzer.com where you can see some of the ridiculous moments in my life and all that kind of fun stuff. Anyway, this has been a great journey. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Take care, guys. Peace.